All right, let us begin. Let's start with an invocation. Let's keep our spine straight, our shoulders rolled back and down. Inhale slowly and deeply, and exhale slowly and deeply. Inhale, just be aware of all the tension and stress you're carrying around in your body. So, first, you inhale, be aware of your shoulders. Inhale, hold your breath for a few seconds, be aware of the tension, and now with your exhalation, release the tension. Let it go. Inhale, repeat again. Be aware of your shoulders, be aware of your back. Exhale and release the tension. Now bring your awareness to your face, especially to your jaws, how your teeth might be clenched, of your head. Inhale. Bring your awareness to your face, to the tension, and exhale. Once more, inhale. Be aware of your face, be aware of your neck, your shoulders, be aware of the tension, and release them. Release and let go. Inhale once more and be aware of the cloud of tension surrounding you in your emotions. Simply be aware of any emotional disturbances, any sadness, any other kind of tension that you're carrying around. Inhale, and as you exhale, expel it and let it go. Inhale once more. Be aware of the tension, be aware of the stress. Just inhale, and as you exhale, let all the stress and tension banished away from your body. And let go. Now, be aware of your thoughts, of your immediate thoughts, be aware of your environment, your surroundings. Inhale, and expel and release all the thoughts. Let go. Now, mentally, affirm I am not the body. I am not the emotions. I am not the thoughts. I am not the mind. The emotions and thoughts are the products of the soul. The mind is only a subtle instrument of the soul. I am the soul. Now remember to connect your tongue to the palate and be aware of the downpour of tremendous divine energy coming in from your crown and flooding through your entire body. I am that I am. I am a spiritual being of divine intelligence, divine love, and divine power. Inhale, hold your breath, just be aware, exhale and let go. I am that I am. I am a child of God. I am connected to God. I am one with God, a being of divine intelligence, divine love, divine light, divine power, connected to my higher soul, one with my higher soul, connected to God, one with God, spiritually connected to all. And just be aware of this divine connection. Be aware of the light covering your entire being. And now, with the awareness that I am the soul, mentally say to the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, to my spiritual teacher, Master Chua Kok Sui, to Lord Mahaguruji Mei Ling, to all the great, great ones, the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, and spiritual helpers, to my higher soul, to my divine self, to the angels of love and wisdom, to the angels of theosophy. Thank you for your priceless blessings of divine light, divine love, and divine power, for divine healing, inner healing, physical healing, psychological healing, divine help, divine guidance, and divine protection. Thank you for blessing me with awareness and understanding of the topic of clairvoyance, that I may fully comprehend the subject, and that I may use this information and knowledge to help myself become a better person and a better soul, that I may use this information in the benefit and service of humanity, and to help and serve all the beings we share this space, this planet Earth with. May we become instruments of healing, of love and mercy, and of service. Inhale, inhale the blessings, inhale the energy. Also, mentally, give a small thanks to the gods of the internet, to the spiritual beings in charge of connectivity, that we may remain connected and have a strong internet connection throughout this course and be free from any technical difficulties. To my higher soul, to my divine self, to my guardian angels, thank you for your priceless blessings, your help and guidance and protection. Thank you, in full faith. Take a deep breath once more. Center yourself, bring it to yourself, and as you exhale, return to your body. Inhale once more. Exhale, return to your body, move your fingers, move your toes. Inhale once more. Hold your breath, and as you exhale, open your eyes with a big smile. How's everyone feeling? Good? Fantastic. All right. So today we are on chapter 3, or rather the third session of clairvoyance, the topic of clairvoyance. And we've already covered simple clairvoyance, we've covered full clairvoyance, partial, and we'll be now talking about a more interesting subject about clairvoyance in space, the intentional, semi-intentional, and completely unintentional parts. It is the first part which is of most interest because semi-intentional, unintentional, as you can well understand, are things which happen without much control. But before we go so much into that, a quick recap of what we've covered before, and the recording's already there on YouTube for you to look at. It's shared in the group. And this portion, the planes of nature, they will hold some importance and context. So I'd just like to bring that up in context with us again, because there are various matters on the various planes of nature, which with our thoughts, with our willpower, we can control, we can manipulate. And as we use these energies, as we control these subtle matters, we are going to be able to develop our clairvoyance more and more. So one of the first steps in developing clairvoyance is the control over the finer states of matter. Now, if we have a very gross physical body, if the body is subject to a lot of, say, alcohol or a lot of heavy meat eating or a lot of, say, substances and other influences which are not so good for the body, then obviously the matter is not so refined. In order to have more refined matter, we need to purify ourselves. Physical purification, emotional purification, psychological and mental purification. So these various kinds of matter then come into our control. Now, one of the things we spoke about in the last session were how you can physically see objects in the astral plane and the mental plane. So this time we are in some luck because we've been able to find some images which kind of convey the idea of what clairvoyance looks like. So on your left, you have a box, a standard shipping box, all right? And on the right-hand side, this is what this same box might look to you when you're using your astral clairvoyance. Okay, so you've got the base of the box over here. That's right there at the bottom. You've got the top side, left side, right side, and the bottom side, and the various coverings therein. So for a person who is properly clairvoyant in the astral plane, this is what a box would look like. Can you imagine that you're used to seeing this three-dimensional object, but in the astral plane, all the objects, all the sides are open to you. Now, of course, that's just the inside. The outside would be the same thing, but flipped around. So that's a very interesting kind of looking material again. And then if there's anything inside the box, that too is then expanded and exploded and shown. Now, here is a very interesting photo. Does everyone know what this shape is called? What this kind of structure is called? It looks like a lotus flower, looks like a painting. In some cultures, it is called a rangoli. In some cultures, it's called a kolam. In some cultures, it's called a mandala. In the Tibetans, they tend to call this like a mandala. And if you look online, there's a lot of art and paintings which come with it, mandala drawings and mandala paintings, and it's very creative. Now, a mandala over here, it's believed to be a kind of circuitry, a kind of pattern, which represents inner worlds, which represents a lot of deeper energies. So this you're looking as a mandala on a flat surface. But this is what it might look like, when you're looking at it etherically or astrally. Do you notice now it has some depth in it that you can go inside? It acts as a bridge or a portal between one state of consciousness to another state of consciousness. Look again at the patterns. Are they moving clockwise or anti-clockwise? Are they moving all in one direction or in other directions also? Are there other petals and other objects, other sides to it? So the ancient people, the previous generations, they were very wise. They could see energy and they encoded their teachings in graphical form, so it did not get lost in time. Now words, as we know, they can be very easily misinterpreted or misunderstood and not and lose its meaning over a period of time. We have this game, right, called we played when we were young, Chinese whispers. Like, you have a line of people, someone says something over here, and you're supposed to whisper it into the ear of the person beside, and goes on and on and on until the end of the line. And the last person, when he or she speaks the final word, it's very different from what the first person said. So teachings get distorted over time. But if you've got photographs and you've got the pictures which are left untouched, unaltered, then the teachings, the encoded teachings, they can remain. In some cultures, this is called a terma teaching. What is a terma teaching? A terma teaching is when the teaching is encoded by the teacher in the consciousness of the student, or it is encoded in some object. So if you have a graphical image, you can, with your developing consciousness, with your growing awareness, can interpret it and understand it. So clairvoyance means clear vision. And therefore, this clear vision gives the idea, the ability to understand deeper teachings, esoteric teachings, and mysteries, which can be hiding in plain sight. So something which initially appears to simply be a sketch or a drawing or something we do during religious or social gatherings or ceremonies could actually be an entry point of energy, of greater energy, of prosperity, relationships, whatever you call it. Okay. Now, if you take the same mandala, if you take the same drawing and then you make it into a little more 3D, you look at it from all possible sides, it could represent anything from a simple design to the structure of a house or a home, to even the entire structure of what could be a star system or a solar system. So we as human beings, we are used to seeing one side, one perspective in our thoughts, in our interactions with other people as well. But when we start to see the whole picture, we start to see all the dimensions of it, on what's above, what's below, what's inside, what's outside, all the various aspects of it. That is when true clairvoyance begins to develop. So you start to see various angles, various facets, and they become exploded to us. And we can go deep in or we can go deep out. So this structure on the left could well be the atomic structure of an element. How many electrons? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 electrons. I've forgotten my basic chemistry. In the periodic table, which subject has 7 electrons and 7 protons? Anyway, that's besides the point. So if you remember, in one of the previous chapters, we spoke about clairvoyance having the ability to zoom in and to zoom out, one of the 7 or 8 siddhis or superpowers. So here on the left, you could potentially be zooming in and seeing atomic and subatomic structures. And on the right-hand side, you could potentially be zooming out and seeing entire planets. Amazing, isn't it? So that's one. Yeah, it could look like cells. Exactly. It could be any kind of structure. It could be any kind of organization which holds and structures the entirety of creation together. So clairvoyance lets you see the various details which are connecting. Now, this is a very interesting diagram, okay? This is what a human being might look like in the inner worlds, because you're seeing them from the front and from the back and from both sides all together. Like the whole person is just laid out straight in front of you. The front and the back, it's all the same. Now, for obvious reasons, you cannot find what the insides look like, the internal organs. That would be the stuff for a very scary movie. But this is what potentially a person looks like. Now, this image, this kind of imagery is used in video games to develop video game characters. They take the face, they take the body. So it's imagining. In clairvoyance, you can see the front and the sides and above and below all simultaneously. So when we're practicing, when we are developing our skills to understand that we might be able to see everything front, sides all together, is a sign of more developing clairvoyance. And again, same disclaimer, which the teachers have mentioned in the previous chapters. A true clairvoyant will never go around saying, hey, look at me, I'm clairvoyant. Okay, only someone who's very partially clairvoyant or someone with who wants to show off, Only they will come and say, hey, I'm clairvoyant, let's test my clairvoyance. A true clairvoyant is a quiet one. So, and of course, you have the insides also, energy moving in, energy moving out. You can see all the cells and structures and tissues, all of it all together simultaneously because everything is visible. So it's a great matter of training that you're able to zoom in and look at specifically what you're looking at. So if you want to look at, say you're using it for the ability of healing someone in the inner world, and you want to say, okay, there's a problem in the bones, you clairvoyantly tune in to the energy of the bones. Or you want to look at the nerve cells, you look at the energy of the nerve cells, and then you can see where maybe there's a nervous blockage, where the electricity is not passing, so on and so forth. So these are some of the images which are there on the internet, which you can find. And perhaps if you exercise your imagination and if you exercise your awareness, you can try and see how many deep teachings are encoded in our common everyday life. We just have to become aware. And that is exactly what clairvoyance is, to become more aware visually. So with that, that concludes completely the chapter of full and partial clairvoyance. And now we're going to go on to chapters, I think 4, 5, and 6, where we're going to talk about clairvoyance in space. So the first one is clairvoyance in space, and that is intentional. Now we've defined this as the capacity to see events or scenes removed from the seer in space and too far distant for ordinary observation. The instances of this are so numerous and so various that we shall find it desirable to attempt a somewhat more desirable classification of them. So it doesn't matter which particular arrangement we adopt, so long as it's comprehensive enough to include all our cases. Perhaps a convenient one would be to group them under the broad divisions of intentional and unintentional clairvoyance in space. So space and time, again, repeating this, space and time are interconnected and interrelated. You cannot understand space without talking about time. You cannot understand time without talking about space. So one of the examples given in the first session was, suppose you call up a friend and say, let's meet at 8 o'clock today. And the friend says, yeah, sure. Where? So you know the time, but if you don't know the space, you can't meet. Or if you say, okay, let's meet at the coffee shop, and the friend says, sure, when? So space with the correlation of time. So you may have a correlation of space, a clairvoyance of space, but without an understanding of the clairvoyance of time, the interpretation is faulty, it is kind of meaningless. So in talking about clairvoyance of space, and later we shall all tie it up, they classify it according to the intention and the ability of it. So intentional clairvoyance, semi-intentional clairvoyance, and completely unintentional clairvoyance. So the first type that we'll talk about, which is intentional, is that you have to understand that the power of astral vision, when we're seeing things astrally, that anyone possessing it in its fullness will be able to see by its means of practically anything that he wishes to see. Clairvoyantly, anything that you wish to see can be seen. The most secret places are open to their gaze, and intervening obstacles have no meaning, have no existence for him because of the change in his point of view. Because if you grant him the power of moving about in the astral body, he can go without difficulty anywhere and see anything within the limits of the planet. So with a person who has developed clairvoyance, objects, limitations, borders, boundaries, obstacles, they mean nothing because they can just alter their point of view, and alter their point of view not just from one angle to another angle, but from one location to an entirely different location. Indeed, this is to a large extent possible to him even without the necessity of moving the astral body at all. So the astral body can just stay where it is. Normally, when we think that we're moving a point of view, it's like, okay, the astral body is here, and then if I want to see something on that side, I have to move the astral body over there. But in the case of larger training, larger possibilities, even the astral body can just stay where it is, and the movement of energy can happen like that. So now, let us consider a little more closely the methods by which the superphysical sight may be used to observe events taking place at a distance. When, for example, a man in England can see in the minutest detail something which is happening at the same time in India or America. How is this done? Okay. So it has been suggested, first comes the theory, it has been suggested that every object is perpetually throwing off radiations in all directions, similar in some respect to the rays of light, and clairvoyance is nothing but the power to see them by the means of these finer radiations. Distance in that case is no bar to the sight at all, because all intervening objects would be penetrable by these rays, and they would be able to cross one another to infinity in all directions without entanglement, precisely as the vibrations of ordinary light do. In modern physics, this particular theory is called quantum entanglement. Is when you have an object which is moving at one portion in space, its corresponding object is moving many millions of miles away. Similarly, you rotate one here, the other object rotates over there. It's called spin, part of it is spin theory. So modern science knows about it, knows that it exists. There's no explanation as to why it's happening or how it's happening, but in spiritual terms, the answer is simple: oneness. It's because there is spiritual oneness that all this connectivity, all the sights, the sound, the astral travel, the astral moving about, all of this becomes possible. Now it says that every object is partially or perpetually throwing off radiations in all directions. So just like you and me, we know we've got an aura, and you can scan and check for those of you who've done pranic healing, you can scan and check the size of the aura, the activation of the chakras. You can see whether it's becoming bigger or smaller or staying the same. Similarly, you can scan the energy of objects, right? And based on these diagrams, now these diagrams, they are what is called thermal imaging. They're taken from a thermal imaging website where it shows, look at this, this third image, residential heat loss. The brighter parts are the ones which are the hottest, and the purpler or the bluer ones are the parts which are coldest. Now looking at it, imagine you're looking at temperature clairvoyantly. You can make out which is the hottest and which is the coldest parts of the house. So they can use this kind of image to find out where heat is being lost. So it's in a cold country, they can use insulation, and then they can block the movement of the heat. Similarly, we've got other kinds where you can find out electrical problems. You can locate water damage, like over here, the sixth image. You've got these water pipes and you've got these walls and windows, and you've got this water which has leaked in, and they've carried some of the heat along with it. So that part is going to look hotter. So there's a drain pipe on the top of the house, and this water has leaked in over here thermally. That's what you can see. Likewise, you've got a blockage in a pipe, and this is kind of self-explanatory. Where the movement is, it's green. Where the blockage is, it's red. So think of it like, imagine if you're practicing and you're looking at someone, you're looking to see where the blockages are. This is kind of what it might look like to you when you are intentionally developing your clairvoyance, when you're intentionally working on seeing. All right. So again, identifying this problem, finding electrical problems, missing insulations, etc., etc. Now you can well imagine that distance is not a problem to the side, because as you're zooming out, you can very quickly zoom in. Or if you're zooming in, you can very easily zoom out. So distance is never an issue when it comes to clairvoyance with the proper training. Now, though this is not exactly the way in which clairvoyance works, the theory is nevertheless quite true in most of its premises. So that's the working theory. Every object is undoubtedly throwing off radiations in all directions, and it's precisely in this way, though on a higher plane, that the Akashic records seem to be formed. Do you know what the Akashic records are? Have you come across this term, Akashic records? So the Akashic records are supposed to be a library of information which talks about everything. It knows everything about your past, your present, to a certain extent your future, and everything else from the very beginning of time, even before time existed, to whatever's going to happen in the later. So because it's also giving off radiation, some of the energy from the highest Akashic planes, they might come down to the lower planes and we might be able to tap into it. Of course, that's just a possibility, and it's beyond the scope of this particular book to talk about it. However, there are certain practical difficulties in the way of using these vibrations as a medium by means of which may see anything taking place at a distance. Intervening objects are not entirely transparent, and the actors in the scene which the experimenter tried to observe would probably at least be equally transparent. So it's quite obvious that some serious confusion will be likely to result. Let's just illustrate this with an example. Go back to the previous slide, where you can look at here at residential heat loss, or better yet, look at locating water damage. Now, it could be that this person over here, there could just be a tall person sitting over there, or a tall person standing over there. So what you might think is water leaking down could just well be the heat signature of that person going out. So it's possible to misinterpret it if we just use this as the ability for using clairvoyance. Okay. So what are the ways in which true clairvoyance works? The first one, very basic one, by the assistance of a nature spirit. This method does not necessarily involve the possession of any psychic faculty at all on the part of the experimenter. He needs only know how to induce some resident of the astral world to undertake the investigation for him. It's like hiring a private investigator, you know. You're sitting there, you pay some money, the investigator goes and gets all the information, comes back and gives it to you in a dossier. So you have all the information ready for you. But of course, you can't hire private investigators in the astral world. At least I don't think you can. So how do they do it? It is done through invocation or by evocation. That is to say, the operator may either persuade his astral component through prayers and offerings to give him the help he desires, or he may compel his aid by the determined exercise of a highly developed will. So you can beg, you can pray, you can give gifts, kind of like what you see. You've seen students before examinations, especially nowadays. They're like, oh God, please get me top marks in this assignment or get me maximum grades. It might be bringing back some very pleasant or unpleasant memories from when you were back in school or college. And then you've got people who've got they're about to invest in some business and they're praying, oh God, let this be like a multi-million-dollar deal and let my investment become 200,000 times more than my initial thing. So, pray, hope for things to happen. Okay, so it's a kind of like a low-level prayer. They're not obviously praying to the universal supreme God. They're praying to whoever entity is there who deals with wealth, or whichever entity is there that deals with school marks or relationships or whatever. So similarly, there are many entities which exist in the astral world, in the astral plane, who are willing to do this service of offering clairvoyant information for some kind of a gift. So they can either be prayed to a lot, you can really pray them, or you can give them certain gifts or give them certain help in order to get the information. One of the simplest ways that this can be done is that if you simply bless. So in your prayers, after your meditations and blessings, when you're blessing every person, every being with all the energies and qualities they need, as you bless every person, every being with accurate perception, with correct expression, with the ability to see things the way they are, to see reality, then you too get blessed by these beings. You get blessed by God to see things the way they are. Now, if your intention is developed that you want to see clairvoyantly, or if you want to see in more detail, that of course is equally possible. Will it work? And how quickly will it work? It's a matter of time, it's a matter of practice. It won't happen just like that. It won't happen overnight. Now, this method of magical invocation, by the way, there's a book called The Secrets of Magical Evocation. I think that's also by Franz Barden, but that again forms a part of the Kabbalistic series, which deals entirely with magic and not really clairvoyance or theosophy. So this method has been largely practiced in the East, where the entity employed is usually a nature spirit. And in the old Atlantis, the old Atlantean civilization, where the lords of the dark face use a highly specialized and particularly venomous variety of artificial elemental for this purpose. Artificial elementals and all we've covered in the previous study sessions, but you could use them, they could use them in order to get their work done. Like creating a robot, you could say, a very vicious and unhappy kind of robot. So continuing with the assistance of nature spirit, the information is sometimes obtained in the same sort of way as the spiritualistic seance of modern days. But in that case, the messenger employed is more likely to be a recently deceased human being functioning more or less freely on the astral plane. Though even here, also it is sometimes an obliging nature spirit who is amusing himself by posing as someone's departed relative. In any case, as the author has said, this method is not clairvoyant at all, but magical, and it's mentioned here only in order that the reader should not become confused. Okay? So this kind of clairvoyance is not really clairvoyance because you're using someone else's help, someone's service, and it might not even be a genuine person or a genuine energetic being who is offering that service. So that's clairvoyance in space through the assistance of a nature spirit, done by magical evocation or invocation. Okay, part number 2, by means of an astral current. What is really done by the student who adopts this method is not so much the setting in motion of a current in astral matter as the erection of a kind of temperate, okay, this is kind of technical. So what you've got is, like you've got waves in the ocean, you've got waves in the rivers and seas. There are multiple levels of waves, right? So you've got the deep, heavy waves way at the bottom, and you've got the larger or the more excitable waves at the top. If you've been to the beach, you know what I'm talking about. You go slightly deeper into the water, and you've got thin waves, small splashy waves, which are at face height or at chest height. But then suddenly a slow wave, which you didn't see coming, which you didn't feel coming, they come right under your feet, and then the next thing you know, you're looking for dry land, you're floating about. How many have experienced this? If you've been to the beach, the sudden feeling of the sand being pulled out under you and you're just floating about. This is happening because of the currents. There are deeper currents lower down, there are middle currents, there are lighter currents, all of them in different quantities and different strengths at the higher levels and at the lower levels. So what is done is the astral world also has these currents, these astral currents, and it's possible that if you release something at one point, it's going to be carried forward to another point, or something from another point may be brought to wherever you are located. So it's kind of like you're erecting a kind of a temporary telephone line through it. So it's possible to make in astral matter a very definitive connecting line that acts like a telephone wire or telegraph wire to convey vibrations by means of all that is going on at the other end and which can be seen. Now, such a line is established, it should be understood, not by a direct projection through astral matter, by such action upon a line or multiple lines of particles which have come together. Very simply put, have you seen this image, this one on the right? They're called plasma balls or something. They have it in their cars or decorations. You touch the surface of it and it kind of forms this electricity. You might have seen this in some souvenir shops or toy shops or wherever. So what happens is this astral energy, which is constantly floating and moving about, they kind of get magnetized. They get magnetized through an effect, through a polarization effect, which is a result of the application of human will. So you have all of these lines which are moving about randomly, but when the will is applied, the line becomes central. So you've got all these things which are floating about normally, but the moment you've got one dedicated will, all of it converges to that point. So just like a telegraph wire or a telephone wire, you can have multiple such points set up, and they are transmitting the information from point A to point B to point C, and so on. And the clairvoyant person who is using their clairvoyance, they can tune into the information over there and extract the information for their benefit. And so all the atoms thus affected are held together for the time, with their axes rigidly parallel to one another. So they kind of form a temporary tube along which the clairvoyant may look. So it's a temporary connection. Once the connection is released, it's gone. For as long as the willpower is there, as long as the clairvoyant person is using the willpower, all of it is held together. When it is released, they dissipate again. It's gone. Okay. Now, this method has a disadvantage that the telegraph line is liable to disarrangement or even destruction by any sufficiently strong astral current which happens to cross its path. But if the original effort of will were fairly definite, this would be a contingency of only infrequent occurrence. Think of it like you're trying to build a line in the middle of the ocean. Like you have these internet lines which come across the floors of the ocean. So it's very difficult to make these thick, heavy lines. So every time they tried to set it up, the line broke because there were other currents which were constantly affecting it. Through practice with a strong willpower, the line became thicker, the line became stronger and bolted down. So even if any other external current acts upon it, it doesn't have an effect. So the disadvantage is that without practice, without a sufficiently strong will, it's not possible to make such a thing happen. So again, over here, the author is kind of giving us the teaching encoded in a certain way, that in order to develop clairvoyance, you need A, purification, and B, a strong willpower. So again, for people who are going through difficult problems in life, but they claim to be clairvoyant, well, that clairvoyance is happening because they're not well, which was mentioned in one of the previous chapters, because of the damage in the astral body, because of damages in the aura and other energies. So a strong will and a lot of purification is essential for a person to become clairvoyant. So if you happen to know any meditation or any spiritual practice which develops your willpower, which purifies yourself, which makes you more loving and access to subtle energies, do that. Anyone here who practices any such meditation technique? Okay. So the view of a distant scene obtained by this astral current method is kind of similar to what you can see through a telescope. So when you're seeing through a telescope, it appears really, really small, like that on a very distant stage. But in spite of their very small size, they're as clear as though they were close by. Sometimes it's possible by this means to hear what is said as well as to see what is being done. But in the majority of cases, this does not happen. So we might consider it rather as the manifestation of an additional power, such as clairaudience, rather than a necessary side effect of the faculty of clairvoyance. So you're looking through a telescope, you might even be able to hear what is said through a telescope, but that happens very rarely. Now, when we were young, there was this joke told of this comic. This man had recently purchased binoculars. Okay, binoculars. He was, watching birds and whatnot, very happy. So one day, he told his servant to go to the shop and buy some sweets. So the servant went out, and he was on the 10th floor, and the servant is down in the busy street, and the man is like, "Oh, I forgot to tell him to get me some medicines." So he tried shouting, but obviously the servant couldn't hear him because of the distance and the traffic. So he had a very bright idea. He took his binoculars, he focused on the servant, and then through the binoculars he said, "Hey, don't forget to get the medicines, okay? All right, okay, cool." And he put the binocular aside. So naturally, that's not going to work. It's not going to be successful at all, except that the person feels good that he might have attempted something. So similarly, clairvoyance like this is that you think you're seeing very clearly, but the communication which you receive is kind of liable to be faulty because you are going through a kind of telescope, which itself is not always 100% stable. So in order to be able to hear and see at a distance, that amount of purification and the development of the faculties is necessary. Right. The continuing with the means of an astral current, the experimenter, for example, has no power to shift this point of view. His telescope, so to speak, has a particular field of view which cannot be enlarged or changed. He is looking at his scene from a certain direction and from that certain direction only. He cannot suddenly turn it around and how it looks like from the other side. If he has sufficient psychic energy to spare, he has that much of excess energy, he may altogether drop the telescope that he is using and create an entirely new one for himself and alter the point of view. So it's like the telescope is fixed at this angle. He can't just move it over there. He has to abandon it, assuming he has that much power, and then create a new telescope which looks in the other direction. So that obviously you can imagine requires a tremendous amount of energy, a tremendous amount of willpower. So astral sight, when it is cramped by being directed along what is practically a tube, is very, very limited, as physical sight would be under similar circumstances. Though, if possessed in perfection, it will still continue to show, even at that distance, the auras and therefore all the emotions and most of the thoughts of the people under observation. This line here, this teaching here, is something which is very encoded. All right. Astral sight, when it is cramped and being directed along what is practically a tube, is very limited as physical sight would be. So I would like you to do this, okay? Take your hands and place it above your eyes. Can you see anything? Please do this with me. Take your hands and place it above your eyes. Can you see anything? No, right? Okay. Now, bring it to the side. Bring it to the side of your face. How much can you see beyond this and beyond that? How much can you see to the left? How much can you see to the right? Not much. Okay. Now move it a little bit. Can you see a bit more of what's in front of you? Now move it a little bit more. Can you see more of what's in front of you? Now keep expanding, expanding, expanding your hand. Of course, I'm limited by the camera, but basically keep expanding it until you come to the maximum of what you can see with your peripheral vision. So you're looking straight. You are looking straight, but your hands are on either side. And you're able to see your fingers, your hands on either side to improve and enhance your peripheral vision. So you can do it at above eye level, you can do it at eye level, you can do it below eye level. So the physical practice of expanding your perspective, the physical practice of expanding your field of vision will to a certain extent have an impact on your clairvoyant faculty as well. Because physical sight is not cramped, you develop a thought form, you develop a practice, an energy that you're able to see more. You're able to see greater distances. Your peripheral vision is more and more. So you improve this, you improve it on all sides, and therefore your clairvoyant ability also starts to get stimulated and activated. Any questions about this particular technique or on what you've done so far? No questions? All right, moving on then. Continuing by means of an astral current, There are many people for whom this kind of clairvoyance is very much facilitated if they have at hand some physical object which can be used as a starting point for their astral tube, or like a convenient focus for their willpower. So crystal ball is the commonest and most effectual of such a focus, since it has the additional advantage of possessing within itself qualities which stimulate psychic faculty. But other objects are also employed, to which we shall find it necessary to refer to semi-intentional clairvoyance. So you have these crystal balls. You've got scenes of these magicians or fortune tellers. They've got a crystal ball and they're continuously looking at it. It's, I think it was there also there in the any movies dealing with magic, Harry Potter and stuff. You have these crystal balls and they're crystal gazing, and shapes and objects are floating in. So the crystal ball by itself is not really doing anything, because it is only focusing the ability of the seer himself. The ball itself does not show. What they need first is you need some kind of physical object which can be used to tune in. So they will need, say, the clothing of, suppose someone's gone missing and they want to find out, or someone's passed away, they want to find out how they're doing in the life after death. So the medium will usually ask for some object of clothing, okay, or something which has a person's energy or essence on it. So they'll touch it, they get that astral vibration, they get that energetic vibration, then they use that energy and they use the crystal's properties to magnify it, and then they reach clairvoyantly into space towards that person. But because they are not consciously doing it, because it depends on whatever is showing up, it can only be considered to be what they say semi-intentional clairvoyance. So we've covered the first part, which is through the assistance of a nature spirit, the second part, which is through the astral current. And now we come to the third part, which is by the projection of a thought form. Okay, by the projection of a thought form. The ability to use this method of clairvoyance implies a development somewhat more advanced than the last, since it necessitates a certain amount of control upon the mental plane. Thought takes form at any rate upon its own plane, and the vast majority of cases it takes place upon the astral plane also. But it may not be so generally known that if a man thinks strongly of himself as present at any given place, the form assumed by that particular thought will be a likeness of the thinker himself, which will appear at the place in question. 2020, we're at home, we're in lockdown, we're not allowed to move out. We miss our travel, we miss our meeting our friends, family, and loved ones. So we start thinking about it. We think, okay, suppose I could go to the center, and I remember what it's like to physically be at the center. I remember how it feels to walk in, to be greeted. So every time we are thinking of the same place with a certain amount of good energy, with a certain amount of good intention, we are creating a thought form which allows us to go to that place. Later on, they'll talk about how the thought form can be used to see clairvoyantly, but that is in essence the thing. When you are thinking of yourself in a certain location, you are creating a thought form that looks exactly like you, present at that physical location. So if you wish that you were on top of the Eiffel Tower, and you know what it's like at the top of the Eiffel Tower with all the wind and everything else, you're creating a thought form of yourself right on top of the Eiffel Tower. Amazing, isn't it? Now, essentially, this form must be composed of the matter of the mental plane, because it's made of thoughts. But in many cases, it will also draw around itself matter from the astral plane also, and so which approach much nearer to visibility. And that's the reason why I showed you that slide in the beginning, which shows the various planes: the astral, the lower astral, the higher astral, the lower mental, the higher mental, causal, and so on. Why? Because when we are thinking of something, we're using the material from the mental plane. But while creating it, the mental plane also develops some amount of matter from the astral plane. And it's the material from the astral plane which gives us the clairvoyance. Because mental clairvoyance, as I said, is super, super refined. We won't have access to it. But astral imagery, yes, we have access to that. So essentially the form, that this thought form that we create is from the mental plane, but in many cases, it will draw around materials from the astral plane also. The knowledge of these materials is important, because then you can say, all right, I'm creating a thought form and it has some amount of mental plane matter. It should also have some amount of astral plane matter so that I can clairvoyantly see. Once you have that intention with that knowledge, it becomes a lot more efficient. Otherwise, you're just, random. There are, in fact, many instances in which it has been seen by the person thought of, most probably by means of unconscious hypnotic influence emanating from the original thinker. So if you're thinking of a person whom you love very much, whom you miss very much, and they're, very far away, sometimes this person, maybe they're sleepy or in a semi-conscious state, very tired state, they can suddenly see a vision of you standing in front of them. So please don't use your clairvoyance to scare people. Okay, let people rest and enjoy. Yeah, so it's possible, but it has its things. So in a perfect case of this kind of clairvoyance, it is almost as if the seer projected a part of his consciousness into the thought form and used it as a kind of observation post or outpost from which observation was possible. He sees almost as well as he would if he himself stood in the place of the thought form. So if you imagine you're standing on top of the Eiffel Tower or in the front of a beach or your some activity, and you really put your energy into it, it is possible that your consciousness will go over there and you are able to see and feel what's happening exactly around you. But this is a perfect case, perfect kind of clairvoyance, which is kind of beyond our reach because of an insufficiency of purification and character building. Now, the figures at which he is looking will appear to him as of life size and close at hand instead of being tiny or at a distance, as in the previous case. And he will find it possible to shift his point of view if he wants to do so. So in the astral current, it was like looking at it through a tube very far away. If he wants to alter his perspective, he has to abandon that tube, conjure up a new tube, and look at it from there. But in this case, there's no tube. He is the tube. Oh my God, it's YouTube. And he can see it right in front happening as if it's personal, lifelike. So clairaudience is perhaps less frequently associated with this kind of clairvoyance than with the last, but its place is to some extent taken by kind of mental perception of the thoughts and intentions of those who are seen. So remember, in clairvoyance, you're seeing all the colors of the various thoughts. You're able to see what the thought forms look like, the shapes and sizes. So when you are clairvoyantly, you've created the thought form of yourself and you're looking at someone, you're interacting with someone energetically, that person need not necessarily speak with you. But if the person says, hey, I love you, then you'll be able to see that nice pinkish golden kind of color. Or if you want to convey a feeling of protection, then you have that, gold kind of sphere with wings, pink wings, white wings around. So words become superfluous, words become unnecessary because you're able to read the entirety of the conversation and the feelings through the thought forms themselves very directly. You're not limited by the misinterpretation of words. Now, since the man's clairvoyance, since the person's consciousness is still in the physical body, he will be able, even while using the clairvoyant faculty, to hear and to speak in the physical world. Insofar, he can do this without distracting his attention. The moment that the intentness of his thought fails, the whole vision is gone, and he'll have to construct a fresh thought form before he can resume it. So have you noticed this, that if you're really concentrating upon a subject and someone's distracting you, you're kind of on autopilot to the external world. You can answer the questions that, oh, the food is there or the newspaper's there or whatever, but you're still very focused on your task at hand. But if you're like really distracted and the person's like, okay, what you're talking about? And you try to go back to the task, you find that you can't. Have you experienced this? That concentration, that flow is kind of broken and you have to resume it from fresh all over again. So same thing with clairvoyance. Your consciousness is going to work physically as well as astrally, as well as energetically. But if the concentration in the physical world is broken, then the thought from over there also gets broken. So you have to redo the whole process from scratch all over again to continue. You can't just pick up from where you left off. Okay. Any questions until this point? No, we are good. All right. Okay, so this was method number 3, projection of a thought form. Method number 4 is the traveling in the astral body. In this case, the man's body is either asleep or in a trance, and the organs are consequently not available for use while the vision is going on. So that all the description of what is seen and all questioning to further particulars must be postponed until the person's consciousness returns to this plane. Now, this is something which we kind of experience on our own whenever we are really deeply in an invocation. Has it happened to you that you're practicing meditation and you're like, okay, you're in the higher world and you are, still in bliss and stillness and quietness, okay? And then you are asked to return to your body. So in the physical world, you might not even be aware that many minutes have passed. You're just aware, oh, has it been an hour already? You come back and you're like, whoa, where did the time go? And you're not even aware of any physical discomfort. You're sitting in an uncomfortable position or whatnot. You come back and later you need to stretch. It's because your consciousness was so fully out of your body that the physical body is incapable of any kind of response. But when you are back in your body, which is why you move your fingers, you move your toes to really anchor your consciousness back into your body, that you are able to recall your experiences. So the brain is simply a conduit. The brain is a channel for accessing the images of the astral world, the mental world, and so on. And when your brain is also purified, when your brain is sharpened, that is when it is able to recall, recollect, remember, and translate whatever it is that you've seen in the energy world. On the other hand, the sight is much fuller and more perfect. The man hears as well as sees everything which passes before him and can move about freely at will within the very wide limits of the astral plane. He can see and study at leisure all the other inhabitants of that plane, so that the great world of the nature spirits lies open before him, and even that of some of the devas, the lower devas. So fairyland, off to Lala land, these are all part of the inner world. He has also the immense advantage of being able to take part, as it were, in the scenes which come before his eyes, of conversing at will with these various astral entities from whom so much information that is curious and interesting may be obtained. Okay, so it stands to reason to say that many of the information which you read in the esoteric books, in the spiritual books, a lot of the information could well have come with the author moving about in the energy world, taking notes, reading, asking and learning from the inner world, and then coming back into their physical body and then writing it down and putting it across in notes in a book form like this for us, for our benefit. Okay. So that is the traveling in the astral body method. It's possible. How do you travel in your astral body? We've already spoken about this a number of times before. Remember, invoking before sleep, having so that you can be of service in the inner world, or that you are going to the inner world to study from your teacher, these kind of ways. Okay. All right, so we've got a question over here. In intentional clairvoyance, you said holding someone's clothes can lead to seeing about them. Will this work if clothes are belonging to the deceased? Short answer is yes, it is possible, but it'll work if the deceased person is very recently deceased. Okay, if they've passed away a very short time ago. Because if some time has passed, of more than a few days or more than a few months, then the person's consciousness is already there in the different parts of the inner world, in the lower astral, then goes up to the higher astral, lower mental, and so on. So for them, to connect to them that easily might not be possible for, say, a beginner. But if a person is like a super clairvoyant and they have many years of practice, but how will you find out if such a person exists? Because a super clairvoyant will never actually go and declare that they're a super clairvoyant. Okay, they shouldn't. So yes, in theory, as long as you have the essence, as long as you have the connection, it is possible. To answer this question, the second part, when you're traveling in the astral body, you are able to travel wherever, because see, it moves. Point number 2 over here mentions the man hears as well as sees everything which passes before him. He can move about freely at will within the very wide limits of the astral plane. So if the deceased person, if they usually stay in the astral plane for quite some time, if you are able to travel in the astral plane, if you've purified yourself to that extent, you can travel to wherever your loved one or your friend is, and you can actually interact with them. Okay. So a murder victim, can we see what actually happened? Why would you want to do that? You could, in theory you could, but then it's not safe. It's not safe because, remember, again, we spoke of this in some of the previous books, is that there are many people who, in fact we spoke of it here also, there are many astral entities which play pranks. So they might just take up the shape, they might take up the form of the victim, of the loved one, and they can just play a trick on you. All right. So just because you are seeing doesn't mean that what you're seeing is real. I'll repeat that. Just because you're seeing something does not necessarily mean that what you're seeing is real. So you've got to have, that's why, a lot of purification so that you do not attract these lower entities to you. And that kind of purification takes a long time, years and years of practice and character building. Okay. So of course, yes, suppose let's take this example. Suppose someone has met an untimely or an unfortunate death, and then you need more details, you, for your own sake, to find out what happened. You will have the advantage of being able to take part the scenes which come before your eyes, of conversing at will with these various astral entities from whom so much information that is curious and interesting may be obtained. But are you actually speaking to the accident victim? Are you actually speaking to the deceased person? Or are you speaking to someone who's a trickster? Well, that's the thing. Okay. So yes, information obtainment is possible, but it requires, in order for accurate ones, in order to be very properly done. Now, of course, if someone has been murdered and you've gone to the inner world and you found out how they've been murdered, and then you come back, do you think that evidence is going to hold up in a court of law? Depends, I suppose. Okay, point number 4. Continuing by traveling in the astral body. Any more questions upon the astral travel or meeting other people? Then we'll just conclude this portion, because this part gets really interesting, because it talks about the additional abilities. So in addition, he can learn how to materialize himself, and it's not very difficult once you've learned how to do it. According to the authors, he'll be able to take part in physical events or conversations at a distance and show himself to an absent friend at will. Again, he has the additional power of being able to hunt about for what he wants. By the use of the astral body, however, a man can move about quite freely and rapidly in any direction, and can, for example, find without any difficulty any place pointed out upon a map without any previous knowledge of the spot or any object to establish a connection with it. So it's much, much more than telepathy. It's much more advanced than just simple telepathy, because they are able to, they've got the astral body, they're able to project their astral body to any point in space and time, and to physically appear in that astral form to their friends. If you've not seen the movie Doctor Strange, see it, or even the recent one, WandaVision in Disney Plus, watch it, because it shows some amount of astral travel, and the physical body moving about and the astral body also moving about independently. Okay, it's all a matter of the expansion of consciousness. So when a person is sufficiently trained, has sufficient amount of practice, he will be very easily able to project that astral body into a physical location and take part in the conversation. Okay, this is there in some of the other books, I think Masters on the Path, or Occult Letters or something, not exactly sure which books now, but the masters, they were able to communicate, and sometimes they materialized a form, not always visible, but they materialized a form, and they had a conversation with people, and then the form just vanished. So you could become like a spiritual Batman. Come, have a conversation, then you're gone. And then you have the additional power of being able to look specifically for what you want. By the use of the astral body, a person can move about very freely and rapidly in any direction and find any object. So suppose someone's pointed something at the map, you can say, okay, I'm astrally projecting myself, say to, I don't know, Venice. You've projected yourself astrally to Venice. So you go over there and you see, okay, here are the lakes, here are the lanes, the gondolas are kept here. Okay, there's a bridge over here to go from this side to that side. There's some nice shops and eateries over there. Okay, this is the port. So you explored the place astrally, but almost as if you're doing it in the physical world, physically yourself. You gather all that information and then you come back. It's like as if you've done a world tour. All of this is facilitated with more meditation and a lot more purification. So purify, 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 meditate, 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 because then these faculties and abilities become available. The person can also readily rise high into the air so as to gain a bird's eye view of the country which he is examining, so as to observe its size, its extent, the contour of its coastline, or its just general character. Okay, hot, cold, warm, that kind of thing. Indeed, in every way, his power and freedom are far greater when he uses this method than they have been in any of the previous cases. So the strongest form of intentional clairvoyance in space is through traveling in the astral body, because he can freely move about. He's not limited by any other entity. He's not limited by any telescope. He's not limited by any astral current. He's not limited by the thought form. He is actually there. Okay. And then the fifth one, this is simply a higher and super glorified form of the last type by traveling in the Mayavik Rupa, or the mental body. This vehicle employed is no longer the astral body, but a substitute manufactured for the occasion from the substance of the seer's mind body, which means the mental body. A vehicle, therefore, belonging to the mental plane and having within it all the potentialities of the wonderful sense of the mental plane, of the devachanic plane. But so transcendent is it in its action, it's impossible to describe. The enormous advantages given by the possession of this power are the capacity of entering upon all the glory and the beauty of the higher lands of bliss, and the possession, even when working on the astral plane, of the far more comprehensive mental sense which opens up to the student. So they have access to all the higher planes, mental plane, all the stuff in the mental plane, and they're able to see what's happening in the lower planes also. So it's like bringing a Lamborghini onto a super crowded Asian street. Like, I mean, you have the faculty and you can go really, really fast, but again, without that kind of purification, it's kind of difficult. So this kind of higher flight is possible for the trained man, since to form this kind of Mayavi Rupa, or the mental body, for the first time needs the assistance of a qualified master, like a spiritual ascended master, not a physical master, but an ascended master. So mental body travel is also very, very possible, but very, very difficult, very complicated, and requires direct assistance from the holy masters. So for us, traveling in the astral body is the greatest for the time being that we can utilize without needing any extra additional super training. Okay. And mental body is possible, but it's kind of difficult and hard to describe at our present stage of development. So that brings the conclusion to chapter number 4. Chapters 5 and 6 are actually quite small. So, clairvoyance in space, semi-intentional. The author says that under this rather curious title, he is grouping together the cases of all those people who definitely set themselves to see something, but have no idea what that something will be, and have no control over the sight after the visions have begun. So many trance mediums would come under this heading. They either in some way hypnotize themselves or are hypnotized by some spirit guide, and then they describe the scenes or persons that happen to float before their vision. Sometimes, however, when in this condition, they see what is taking place at a distance, and so they come to have a place among our clairvoyants in space. So there's a chance that they see something which is happening at a distance, and they say, okay, today I am going to practice clairvoyance. We are going to sit down, we're going to invoke, we're going to pray, meditate, and purify, and we're going to do clairvoyant activities. All right, great. What are we going to see? We don't know. Where are we going to see it? We don't know. When we start seeing it, can we control it? No. But there's a chance we might, and therefore that becomes semi-intentional clairvoyance in space. So it's only by practicing the semi-intentional over and over repeatedly with proper purpose, with clarity, that we can kind of migrate and graduate to clairvoyance in space, which is intentional. Okay, so there's a story given over here. I've just taken it from the book itself. It talks about a kind of vision most frequently seen in this kind of way. So Mr. Lang is the author here. He had given a glass ball, a crystal ball, to a young lady named Miss Bailey, who had scarcely any success with it. And Miss Bailey lent it to Miss Leslie, who saw a large square. So in the crystal ball, we spoke about this some time back. Remember that they take a crystal ball which kind of magnifies and it's semi-intentional, that kind of thing. So in the crystal ball, she saw a large square, an old-fashioned red sofa covered with muslin cloth, which she found in the next country house that she visited. Miss Bailey's brother, a young athlete, laughed at these experiments, took the ball to the study, and came back looking really, really scared or terrified or something. I don't know what this word means. He admitted that he had seen a vision. Somebody he knew, he saw that person under a lamp. He would discover during the week whether he saw right or not. And he saw this at 5:30 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon. On Tuesday, Mr. Bailey, which is Miss Bailey's athletic brother, was at a dance in a town some 40 minutes from his home, and he met a Miss Preston. On Sunday, he said, about 5:30, you were sitting under a standard table lamp in a dress. I never saw you wear a blue blouse with lace over the shoulders, pouring out tea for a man in a blue serge, I don't know what that is, whose back was towards me, but I only saw the tip of his mustache. So he didn't see a person, he saw the tip of the mustache. Now, can you imagine the size of that mustache? The person's back was turned in shadow, but he could see the tip of his mustache. Must have been a really, really amazing mustache. Why, the blinds must have been up, the curtains must have been up. I was at Dulby, and he undeniably was. That's a location. So it's a typical case of crystal gazing. The picture is correct in every detail. Pay attention to this. The picture is correct in every detail. You can see the tip of the mustache, and yet it is absolutely unimportant. It has no significance of any sort to either party, except that it served to prove to Mr. Bailey that, there's something in crystal gazing. Perhaps more frequently, the visions tend to be of a more romantic character, men in a foreign dress or beautiful through generally unknown landscapes. So it's kind of like the clairvoyance is like, I remember when we were very young and we were passing by a certain street and we saw a teacher. Okay, we saw the teacher in the teacher's residence. And then the next day at school, we say, sir or ma'am, I saw you at your home. Like, okay, so what? So you saw the home, you can describe the home, you saw the person, you know the person, but the matter is of no consequence. It has no importance whatsoever. So this kind of thing is like, yeah, okay, clairvoyance exists, clairvoyance works, and so what? What do we do with it? That's it. Under this heading, so this is now we've moved on to unintentional clairvoyance, clairvoyance in space, unintentional. Under this heading, we may group together all those cases in which visions of some event which is taking place at a distance are seen unexpectedly and without any kind of preparation. So it's like literally a vision. There are people who are subject to such visions, while there are many others to whom such a thing will happen only once in a lifetime. These visions will come very, very rarely. The visions are of all kinds and of all degrees of completedness. So full visions, partial vision, incomplete vision, wonder vision, and apparently may be produced by various causes. Sometimes the reason of the vision is obvious and the subject matter of the gravest importance, really, really serious. And other times there's no reason at all. And the events are of the most trivial, most inconsequential nature. So you unintentionally you see something and you just don't know what to do with it, or if it's of any value at all. Or sometimes it might be really, really important. For example, in my childhood, there was this event which happened to a family member, and this particular family member was having lunch and it was a very sleepy kind of afternoon, and suddenly she she woke up and said, there's been an accident, a train accident, a lot of people have been injured, a lot of people have died. And this was of importance because another relative was on the train, was on that particular train, and that ability suddenly manifested itself. And they were able to see. Now back in those days, we're talking 30, 40, 50, 40 years back, there was no way of getting instant news. Like today, news is very easily available. Back then it was not. So they had to wait for a few hours for the evening news to find out that yes, such an accident had occurred, and yes, there were some people who were injured. Fortunately, that particular relative was not in them. So sometimes it so happens that clairvoyance happens and images and sights of importance come out. Again, there's no guarantee of knowing when it's going to happen. There's no reason for it to happen. It just happens. So in the chat, Sarajit says, I have a friend who can sense tremors of earthquakes in his sleep, and bingo, it appears in the news in the following morning. Yeah, yeah. This happens. Some people are just much more sensitive and receptive to other kinds of things. So if you want, if you can cast your mind to thinking, you can share with us in the chat, in the group, examples of when of clairvoyance that you've witnessed or experienced in your own personal life. So as you share, it is in sharing that more and more information comes out. And if we talk about it, we chat about it, it can help us find out more information and purification. So that is clairvoyance in space, unintentional. With this, we come to the end of chapters of clairvoyance in space. And then the next chapter, which we'll complete next time, is clairvoyance in time, of the past and the future, and final tips and techniques. So possibly 2 more sessions, and then we'll be done with the study of clairvoyance in time. If we are pressed for time, then we can potentially, maybe 2.5 or 3 hours, we can compress clairvoyance in time in the methods of development chapter and be done with the book. But, what would you prefer? 2 more sessions and then done, or we can discuss that later. So that's that for the chapters of clairvoyance in space. If we have any questions, now we can take it now. For time, is it moving backwards and forward? Well, we'll come to that. We'll come to that. You can move your consciousness back and forth. It'll be discussed in the next chapter, in the next session. All right. So if there are, can you guide us to travel astrally? Like now? That's no, it's kind of out of the scope. But what we can do is the stuff that we've already been speaking of in the past sessions. Okay, you know what? Might as well. How many people interested in some basic practice based on whatever we read on the screen? Okay, that's one. One and only. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 18 people in the chat. Okay, so 6 out of 18, that's like 33%. So there's this event in Tony Robbins, Unleash the Power Within, and he was asking participants to kind of come in, and he said, imagine you're in a relationship with someone, okay, and in that relationship, that person says, honey, I am 33% committed to you. I am 33% committed to you. Would you really want to put your energies into the rest of that relationship? No, you'd want 100%, right? So if you have 100% of people who want to go ahead with this technique, you'll go for it. If it's 33%, I'm sorry. Okay, repeating yourself twice is not going to count as an increase in percentage. But what I can do is, since we still have a little bit of time, I can tell you about some of the talking points, some of the methods, and you can apply the remainder of the 66% on your own time. Okay, so first things first. Inhale. Keep your back very straight. Your shoulders should be rolled back and down. You close your eyes. Inhale. And exhale. Now, all the sounds and other distractions you hear around you, ignore them. With the help and blessings of God, with the help of my spiritual teacher, with the help of all the great ones, we are now focusing our awareness inside. Be aware of your breath. Simply watch your breathing. Watch and look at your breathing. Watch the breath coming in. Watch the gap. Watch the breath going out. Watch your breath coming in. Watch the gap. Watch your breath going out. Watch the gap. Repeat. In. Watch the gap. Out. Watch the gap. Continue breathing. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold on your own. Be aware of your physical body. Imagine that you are looking at your physical body. You are standing. Bring your consciousness out and look at your physical body. Imagine that you're standing exactly in front of your physical body in its current posture, watching your physical body. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. You're able to see your head, your forehead, your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your ears, your entire facial features, your physical features, you can see. You can see your shoulders, you can see your posture. Now you're looking at any faults in your posture. While looking at your body, direct your attention to whether your weight is balanced or not. Are you seated more on the left side? Are you seated more on the right side? Are you leaning forward or are you leaning backward? Look at it. Don't do anything, just look at it. If you find that the posture is disbalanced, if you find that your spine is not straight or you're favoring one side, make a mental note to correct it consciously when you're back in your physical body. Simply observe. Observe your posture. Now observe whether the breathing is continuing to be deep and rhythmic. Watch the breath while you are outside the body. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. Just observe. Just observe. If you see any colors around your body or emanating from your body, mentally make a note of it. Just keep looking at your face. Be still. Be aware. Physically, move your fingers. Raise your fingers at about your chest level. Hands pointing out. Move your fingers. Move, move, move. Move your toes. Move, move, and move. Take a deep breath. Bring your consciousness back into your physical body. Completely move your fingers, move your toes. Bring your consciousness back. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. With the help and blessings of God, we are fully and completely back in our physical body now. Our consciousness, all our bodies, all our chakras are realigned, fully back now. With the help and blessings of God, with the help and blessings of Master Chopak Sri, my heart, soul, so it is, so it is, so it is. Now, take a deep breath. Exhale and open your eyes. Stretch your fingers. Stretch, stretch, stretch your toes. Just gently move left and right. All right. Back. Please share your experiences. How was it? Everyone back in body, right? Out of body experience, bringing the alertness back. Yep, just take a deep breath. Everyone take a deep breath. Keep your eyes wide open. Take a deep breath. Open your mouth and exhale. Be aware of all the tension and stress you're carrying in your shoulders. Inhale. Hold. And as you exhale, let it go. Similarly, be aware of your posture. Be aware of any disbalances or imbalances in your posture. Straighten it out. Inhale. Exhale and let go. All right, we are done. Palms facing up in the receptive posture to the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, to my spiritual teacher, Master Chopak Sui, to Lord Mahaguruji Mei-Ling, to all the great ones, the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, and holy angels, to the angels of love and wisdom, to the angels of theosophy. Thank you for giving us the ability to understand the subject of clairvoyance, that we may use it to become better persons and better souls, that we may actively use it harmlessly in the service of humanity, in the service, help, and protection of all the fellow beings we share our space on Mother Earth with. Thank you for your priceless blessings, your divine help, divine guidance, and divine protection of love, light, and power. We thank you, we thank you, we thank you in full faith. Take a deep breath once more. Exhale and let go. Atma Namaste, everyone. Thank you for joining in for the third session on Clairvoyance by Leadbeater. Thank you for being with us, and we look forward to the next study session with you. Okay? Thank you so much. I would request, if possible, to share your experiences on the chat group, that we may inspire other people also. Okay, and it'd be nice to have this, to read about it later on. So if you have any experiences or any ideas, it's there. Okay, so thanks everyone. Thanks for joining in, and see you next Saturday. Take care. Have a good evening. Bye.